Good morning. This is week 4 and the last of this set, concentrating on leaves, and today I'm going to concentrate on one leaf to demonstrate, and a dried leaf, and drawing it with using the technique line and wash for it. Dried leaves are amazing because they take on such fantastic shapes and colours and curls, and the good thing about them is once they've dried they stay as they are, so they don't change on you like more lively leaves will. I'm going to use a water resist pen to show you first. And I have these sets of 5, so if anybody wants one, I can send them. They come in varying sizes and varying colours. I'm also going to quickly demonstrate something with a water soluble pen if I have time. So using the colours that I've talked about last week, choosing from that selection. Okay, and these are the various pens in that particular pack. Sepia, which is a 0.1, again another sepia which is 5, which I'll use today because you probably be able to see it a little bit better. They also have 2 dark greys in that pack, a 0.1 and a 0.5 again, and what they call a brush pen, which is a black and is much thicker. And the water-soluble Tombow pens that I hope to have time to show you actually do blend away, and really fun to use and really nice for the subject that I've chosen today. So let's get on. I hope you can see the leaf. I'm going to try and draw it as it sits there at the moment, and holding my pen higher up towards this end and very loosely, because I don't want to get a tight little drawing going on that will look too formal. So here we go, and I'm starting there at the point where the stalk comes away. I tend to try to leave my pen down, and I'll get a few wiggly lines going on, which always looks better than stiff and straight lines. We will be doing way more with line and wash further in, but I'll just give a few pointers today without getting too complicated with it all. So it does actually help if you can get those veins in. So lightly pop that vein in, and that gives me a guide as to where I want to go with this little pointed area. Lots of lovely twists and turns and details in there. So you're going to have to go out this week and find some dead leaves for a change, or dried leaves, shall I say. Now it gets complicated down here because it's really curly. So I'm going to come back here and take it this way. I find it easier to draw that way. They're very forgiving, so if in fact you don't get the marks that you actually see in that leaf, it really doesn't matter. It's going to end up looking like a leaf. Then all we have to do when we've portrayed it in this way is to wash over some colour. Job done. can see that vein coming that way, and then part of the next very main central vein there. That one goes up there, and I can actually see through to the table there. Fine. And then all I have to deal with is a stalk. I don't really want it to go that way, I want it to go that way, so I'm going to do my own thing with the stalk. Just create a nice picture. You don't always have to paint exactly or draw exactly what you see. Go with your gut. So then you can go back and put as much detail and little fiddly bits in as you wish before you start painting. I prefer not to use a pencil at all. I know some people like to draw it first with pencil and then go on and use the pen over the top, but I see little point in that. And if you can actually manage to, unless you're doing something much more complicated like buildings and things, to get the main structure in, then I would prefer to think that you could just use your pen and go straight in with something like this, because as I said, it is quite forgiving. So all I have to do now is wash over with some nice colour. So I'm going to give it a little bit of life this side and go with the raw sienna underneath, and working quite wet. Dropping a little bit of the quinacridone gold over the top. Getting slightly warmer towards the edges of that leaf. Working in the direction that I see the veining, not worrying if I go over the edges, lifting off a little bit of light if necessary. And while that's still damp, I'm going to make a stronger mix here with the burnt sienna and a little bit of the sepia to bring in this little dark edge here. So you can change brushes if you haven't got a very good point on the one that you're using for that wash, but I've got a good point on here, so hopefully I can just manage with that. There's a curl back there, so I'm going especially dark underneath it so that it's going to show up even better. Gets very sort of spotty in places. So for line and wash, if you haven't done very much of it before, is a really really nice technique. People have huge success with it, and especially when you're painting something like this subject here, because you don't have to paint exactly what you see in front of you, you can just let it happen a bit. This paper is actually a slightly smoother one. It's not smooth, it's a cold press which doesn't have very much Fabriano, I think. Very nice for detail, so if you wanted to put any detail in there, that's a good paper to use. It takes a little bit longer to, that's my 10 minutes. Stop, start another one. I have to try not to go over half an hour too much because funny things tend to happen. So I need to just carry on here. I have other things to show. This paper, as I was saying, and it takes a little bit longer. It sits on the top of the paper quite a long time, so it takes a little bit longer to dry. So don't be fussy with this technique at all, especially with something like this subject. You know, just go for it. Try to enjoy it. It's sitting on the top of this paper for quite a long while actually. Gives you a chance to go back in and add. You don't have to worry too much about shine with dried leaves because they actually don't have a lot, but we will be working on shine very shortly. I'm going to go darker down here where it's really curly and try to give nice variation to this subject. So don't be afraid to use a lot of water. It's as long as you counteract that by putting quite a bit of pigment in, it's going to flow nicely and be more of a wash than a painting, which is the intention is really with this subject, with this technique. So I ought to let this curl back dry a bit more where it touches there, but I don't have the time, but I can sort that out later. So the back of the leaf is duller, flatter, and not particularly interesting. So I can just keep that little fold back nice and light and duller. And that's going to show up better for that. But when it's drier, I can pop a little bit more depth behind those curls, as I did there, just to, because that curl back's going to be casting shadow onto the actual leaf. So even if you can't see it in a painting, that's always a good thing to do. Put the shadows in where you feel that they are going to benefit your picture. Right, I think that's okay. It's going to dry up fine. If you want to do anything about the veins, it maybe ought to dry up a little bit more than mine has at the moment. But with the point of view brush, when it's drier, just maybe give it a little stroke of paint because it's going to look more natural and less harsh where the painted line is. Okay, but it's just blending away at the moment because my painting is still quite wet, but you will see some that I did earlier. Now that leaf, the stalk, is really quite bright. So I've just put a little touch of alizarin in with the burnt sienna. I think it was a maple leaf. And as it dries, you can put a few more markings in, you can drop water back in, you can play around and do all sorts of nice things, and also start creating a background if you wish. Maybe you would want to go in and put a little bit more depth here and there, because the darks always look so good and are very nice to put in. So that's the technique. Don't get fussy with it, just wash over, one on top of another, let those colours blend and make marks for you, and job done. Okay, so could you see that all right? I hope you could. Last week I went out of the top of the page, didn't I? I went out of shot a bit. I'm just going to turn off for a second and get my next thing ready, and I'll be straight. Okay. I've completed a drawing of this leaf, which I hope you can see at least some of it sitting there. Another maple leaf that's dried up, and I've drawn that with the water soluble pen, which is in fact double-ended. It has a thick end and a thin end, a fine end. If you actually hold it on its side a little bit more, you can actually get a very fine line. You can make heavier lines by pressing down more, and the other end very, very thick lines and for filling in and so on. Nice pens, and they seem to last for ages. So again, if anybody hasn't got them and would like to try, let me know and I can post them to you, or you can call. Anyway, here we go. So what's going to happen here now is I'm going to give it a little brighter corner here. It's going to pick up when I touch the edge or any of the drawn lines. It's going to collect some of that ink and blend it into my work. Okay, so don't think you can wash over in quite the same way as you could with the water resist pen. You've got to be a little bit more careful about what you're doing, but it will actually make some fantastic marks for you. I love it. Again, blending in a warmer colour on the top of that. I've left some little light white areas of paper showing, which I also really like. So if you painted a little section at a time, just touching that edge where you want it to blend, and I've put various marks in where I could see I needed a bit more depth. There's a hole here and it's got some depth around it. So again, huge fun. It's getting really quite warm here. Allowing this paint to just float away, and it will dry up, making lovely marks for you. It's very, very dark there, so I've got the sepia and the ultramarine blue to make that lovely dark area here. Touching it little really, but just dropping in the colours and letting it float away in the paint. So I've done about 20 minutes. I can keep going for a moment, but I may not get all this done, but you will get the idea of it, won't you? Putting a little bit of the alizarin crimson with the burnt sienna is giving me that lovely bronzy red colour. Very dark there. So I'm trying to get as much variety as I can without making it look too unnatural. Autumn leaves are so colourful and nice to paint. So it's helping me to get the depth here because I put a little bit more of the Tombow pen on top. You can always go back in again with the pen if you wanted to put a bit more depth on there. I think if I do just half of this leaf it will be fine, and then I can show you one that I'd finished. So other things I want to just talk about to give you options. Again, it's got a fold back here. Picking up those lovely colours that are in that leaf and picking up the edges of the Tombow is giving a very natural effect without actually having to do very much work. Sepia is a very good colour, it's a lovely dark brown. And when mixed with the blue is really, really nice. There we go, that's a lovely dark brown, and then when you put a little bit of the blue with it, it becomes darker, dark as you want it to be. But it still has a nice sort of feel about it, being, you know, with the blue. Right, I'm going to speed this up. I just want to pick up these bits of dark Tombow that I've put in there. It's helping to create lovely colours. I like it. I love that bit there. So it's all a little bit unpredictable, but generally speaking it'll do good things for you. So the back side of that is sort of a pale light brown, and again I'm just going to make it dull and without very much colour to emphasise the fact that it's a curl. Lots of curl here. I'm not touching the already painted area at the moment because it's going to blend and I don't want that to happen, so I can sort that out later. But I think you get the idea, I hope you do. Going back in now, as always, I'm putting a little bit more depth. Some more curls there. And then I think I'm just about there for this one. I didn't think I'd get it finished, but I hurried it. There we go. And again, it's a nice dark brown, reddish brown stalk. So anything that's already been dealt with and where you've allowed the Tombow to blend and made nice marks, maybe don't touch again because you'll interfere with that. I like that little area there, so I tried not to disturb it. But there's my Tombow leaf, and I can show you in a minute one that I did earlier. But nice and quick and easy and good to do. I hope that was in shot. I think it was. Okay, so that's that one. And it's going to look different when it's dry, so then when it is dry you can go back and do things to it if you wish. So things that you might like to do. You might like to create a montage, which in fact that isn't. What I decided I would do is paint some little leaves and make pictures of them. So that one is the front of a leaf and the back of a leaf. Okay, so there we go. Those. So that's one picture that I created. There's another little one that I created with a very, very curly leaf. So that's a little picture or a little card for somebody. Quite a lot of work in there actually for a little picture. A hosta leaf in my oval, which is that one. Very tatty, but really, really nice to paint because of it. And that maple leaf again. So there we go, there's a little picture. Or as I say, a nice card for someone at this time of the year. So think about that one. So that's one thing you can do. You may want to get more complicated and get your long pad out and create with hosta leaves. These are all hosta leaves, different ones, and create a nice picture with lots of them in. That's going to take a little bit longer, so that's another challenge for you. Or if you don't want to stick just with leaves, why not create something like this? Collect lots of things from the garden while they're still around. There are still hips around and chestnuts and acorns and things and nice leaves, and create what I would call a forest floor. Just let them go onto the table and paint them just as they are, using any techniques that you feel you'd like to use that we've already covered. There's pen and ink on here, there's just painting without pen and ink, and maybe a little bit of masking here, or is that sgraffito? I think that's sgraffito. So the scratching out works. You can use masking, whatever you like, but you don't have to just paint leaves if you feel you prefer to put something else into it. Alright? Or you may want to just pop some things in a vessel of some description and paint like that. Okay, so there are options. I show you a lot, I'm afraid, because I have got a lot of people who've got different styles, who like doing different things, and who are at different levels. So that's giving everybody, I hope, an option. So that's the very last one of this set. I'll be starting another set next week, creating things and concentrating on shadows, shine and transparency. So that's what we'll be doing next time. So I'll look forward to seeing you next Monday, or you'll be seeing me next Monday, and looking forward to receiving whatever you decide to do this week. Take care. Bye bye.